thanks a lot for being here. I'm actually super excited. I've been giving talks for years, and I always wanted to do meta talks like this, but I never really got the opportunity because, conferences and tech talks, and now I can finally really talk about my passion. And this is something I can't really write about in articles as well, so giving a talk about this is truly amazing. You might know me from a clicker that doesn't work yet. Okay, let me unplug. So this is the thing with leads. I gave a talk before, and the same happened. But I'll get back to that. Learn from it. Learn from failure. First lesson. You might know me from RocketSim. It's a developer tool. Too many things to mention what it does, but it really helps you develop apps faster. The other thing is Swiftly my blog. And I want to make one point clear. The lights made it even more confusing earlier, but I'm not part of the conference. It's not my conference. Truly, I love the conference. We're connected. But nothing more than that. This is in 2021, the first edition, after the COVID edition got cancelled, unfortunately. Who was here? So I'm sweating here. My live demo went wrong. I had a test that usually succeeded, and now it failed, of course. But yeah, the fun thing is, people approached me afterwards, and they told me, Antoine, that was the best thing that could happen. You really needed to solve it with your debug skills, and you really wanted to solve it, so you showed all the things in Xcode. And it taught me a thing, like failure is not a bad thing, right? Like, you can learn from it, and it will actually help others if you use it in your advantage. Today, I'm going to talk about going from a side project to going indie. I went indie this year in March, so super excited to tell you how I did it, my learnings, and my challenges. But what does going indie mean? I think everybody has its own idea of what it means. To me, it means more time with my family. I don't have those annoying meeting days anymore, or 9-to-5 work days. But it's not only happy things, right? Like, it's also more risks. You need to wear a lot of hats. You have much more challenges to face. You're basically building your own income, right? So you need to sometimes work on times that maybe otherwise you had free time. And the key for me in this talk is that we're talking about from a side project. So the learnings today will also be applicable for your main job or anything like that, but it will especially help you if you work on side projects. And there are a few talks that I think are great already, and wouldn't it be great if you can apply them to your side projects as well and make them more successful? So I'm curious, who has a side project? Okay. Who has unreleased side projects? All right, that's good. Who dreams of going indie? Quite a few hands. And who doesn't dare to dream because it's not possible, I won't ever make it? Okay, there's confidence in the room, that's good. All right, so hopefully after today's talk, you'll be able to make that dream come true, or at least kickstart your indie journey. I want you to succeed, so if there's something missing or you have questions, make sure to find me afterwards. But yeah, since the start of Swiftly in 2015, I joined WeTransfer 2 years later, worked there for 7 years. I watched Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, actually twice. I still hang out with my friends. This is in the cinema, amazing, super cool. I became a dad of 2. He's not afraid of heights, not yet, that's good. I married my wife, and I kind of built my own house, not entirely, but I helped. I practice golf, because there will be a rematch someday. And I walk the dog 3 times a day, half an hour. And I'm not sharing this to brag. I just want to show you that there's so much opportunity and there's so much possible, but it's really about doing it and having the right mindset. Because what we think is our potential is often not matching what I think is your actual potential. You can do much more. And hopefully the tools today will help you forward. I have a few topics that I'll go over today. It's an overview. I'll show you some more resources that you can use later to dive deeper. And the first one is mindset. And I like to use this analogy. Who does bouldering? So if you don't know it, you climb on a wall without any security, and you need to reach the final hold with 2 hands, and then you made the route. And there's different colors, right? So the green might be super easy, yellow a bit harder, and red is the hardest. And when I went with my colleagues to bouldering, I found myself sticking with that one route the whole evening. I tried it 200 times until I made it. My colleagues, somewhere else, they couldn't make the route. Well, I'll just try another one. I'm sharing this story because I believe the same can happen with projects, right? You have a new project, super exciting, right? File new project, you can write new code, you don't have those annoying bugs or that maintenance that you need to solve someday. But eventually, those challenges add up, and there's another idea that you have. So why don't I just start a new project and everything is gone, right? Well, you can do that, but I don't think that is the best route to success. Because failure is temporary, right? Unless you make it permanent. And if you can overcome those challenges, I mean, for me, for Rocket Sim, if you saw the first version, it was literally like a menu bar app. And I faced challenges, but I kept pushing through. And eventually it became what it is today. And when I was on the Swift Launch podcast, I had a discussion with Anna, super fun podcast, by the way. I really had a lot of fun, yes, truly. And we were discussing this idea of writing an article. And who here has a blog? Who writes articles? So probably you can relate, because this is day 1. And day 2, you revisit the article, and you're like, I'll rewrite it a bit. Day 10, you come back to it, start over, right? And you'll probably never publish that article for whatever reason, right? I've been writing weekly articles since 2017. That's my longest streak since ever. But what I do, I start on a Tuesday morning, probably around 8, and like literally 2 hours later, I press publish, whatever the version is. And obviously, I'm more experienced now, so the quality is a bit higher than when I started. And I still have that first article. You can look it up. Well, maybe don't look it up. It's terrible, but it still happens on day 10 that I get feedback, which is actually great, right? I apply it to the article, I learn from it, I make the article better, but I already had 10 days of visitors, of views, of people that learn from it in what way. It's super helpful already. I basically mean to say, like, learn by shipping, just push it out, right? Don't doubt. And even if somebody wrote about property reps 10 times already, you can be that 11th person with more up-to-date article maybe, or a different perspective, a different view, right? It's still super useful. And it's basically the path to success, right? You fail a lot of times. And I have a few examples later that clearly show that this is a pattern that just happens. You really need to embrace failure, right? It's okay to fail. Realistic expectations. It's quite difficult nowadays. If you're on an Instagram feed, and once you like one Bernese Mountain Dog video, you'll get a lot of other Bernese Mountain Dog videos. And the same happens with monthly recurring revenue, right? Like, if I'm on Twitter, and maybe it's my feed, I'm not sure how the algorithm exactly works, but I actually do it myself too. You see it on the top left. I share my results. And there's even somebody saying here, a simple tool, making over 10K revenue, right, per month. You're like, whoa, a simple tool. I can do it too. I know how to build apps. But it's not realistic. You don't know how long they have been working towards this, right? So it's often the case that you need to keep yourself honest and be realistic. This is another example. It's way back. It's 2011. I'm not sure about you, but it felt to me like an overnight success. Angry Birds was everywhere, and it was such a major success. And the news articles would only show something like this. But what they don't tell you, the company behind it almost went bankrupt. They tried over 8 years, 50 apps, before this one became successful, and they finally made it to become, profitable. Once again, it takes time, it takes challenges, and you need to keep pushing through. So ask yourself the question, right? If you really want to go indie, or maybe you just want to make your side projects successful and stay with your main job, that's fine too. But set yourself a goal and just stick to that goal. It's your situation, right? Like somebody that lives in a big house needs more income than somebody that just has an apartment, or maybe you have other things that you need to pay. Like, make your own expectations. Who knows these two? We're in the UK. Okay? So, I expected more hands, but maybe it's a really international conference. I'm sharing this. It's related, unrelated, but what happened is that after 110 years without winning the Tour de France, they hired Dave, and Dave really changed a lot. And 4 years later, at the Olympics, that's quite related actually, I didn't realize. But yeah, they won 60% of the gold medals. And not much later, in 2012, they won for the first time the Tour de France. And afterwards, a few more times. And the thing they changed were literally 1% changes. Clothing, sleeping, trainings, also food, you know, like all those kind of little details. And eventually those added up. And the same counts for you. If you improve yourself 1% every day, even if it's a little thing, read one article, or use one new SwiftUI view modifier, right? Like, it can be super simple, and you keep it super simple, much more approachable, but the result will compound over time. So if I have 10 minutes, I have a list of quick wins that I can put in that 10 minutes, and I improve, and I'm better the next day. It's not part of my talk. This is what I often get asked. If you look at me today, I have so many things that I'm doing, right? And yeah, if you were to do that today as well, it's a lot of work. But I build it up over time, small steps every time. This is my Twitter follower count. You know, it really took a lot of time to get to the count that I'm at right now. Same for Rocket Sim. This is actually work, right? Yeah, perfect. You know, that's like 2 years ago. It's like nothing. I couldn't go India at that time, right? So it once again shows, especially with side projects, that it takes time and you need to keep pushing through. And what often happens is, what I see at least, is sometimes they expect like 10K revenue within 2 months after releasing, or you push out your app and you see only 10 installs, which is actually pretty great. But there is like a value of disappointment, right, where you expected more results, and if you be able to push through that, then I think the results will follow automatically. Goals and planning, super important too. Goals set realistic expectations, right? You manage your time well, which is important. Side projects have limited time available, so you need to know what is the highest priority. And that's sometimes not what you would love to build, right? But if you have that overview, you'll be much more effective. Goals and tasks also allow you to create visible progress, leading to motivation, also to, you know, looking back, what did I do? What could I have done better? And what I do, I use GitHub. You know, we're developers, we're familiar with GitHub, so that's probably a useful tool here too. And I'm not sure if you know, but they have a pretty great projects management as well. And what you can see here is that by the end of Q2, I still had a lot of things to do, which is okay, but it's also a reflection, like, did I actually think I could do that in a quarter, or did something else happen, or is the task maybe irrelevant? But there's also a sense of achievement. I did a lot of things. And if I ask you, what did you do in the first quarter of this year, it's probably super hard to remind yourself, right? In general, if you have progression reviews, keep track of what you do, and you'll have a much better story for getting a promotion as well, right? So in general, this is super, super useful. And I go pretty far, right? So I have several repositories for Rocket Sim, for Swiftly. I have a public Rocket Sim repository where everybody can file feedback. And I bring them together in this project, sliced per milestone. And because you can add tickets from all kinds of repositories, this creates a really great overview of everything that I do. And if you think about things, it's pretty hard sometimes to really make sense of it. So writing it down is often a great way to structure things and get an overview, and you actually know, like, oh, that's how it works. And to me, the same counts for tasks. So this is non-technical, right? Like, which microphone should you use? I ended up with Shotgun, in case you wonder, but I do this for everything, right? Meta task, anything. Even if I already finished the task, I create a task for it, and I close it right away. Because at the end of the quarter, you look back and you have a much more complete overview and you feel much more achievement. Some goals are pretty far away, but if you make them, slice them in small tasks, you make it possible to maybe use 10 minutes a day to go further, but it's also more achievable, right? Step by step, you get closer to that bigger goal. And a big goal could be a milestone with small tasks in it, right? So once you have the goals, you need to find a way to reach them as well. And this is an example where I go to the gym, but actually if I would go to this gym, nothing would really happen if I even end up at that gym. The thing is, nobody keeps me accountable, so nobody's waiting there for me to come. So what changed is when I got a personal trainer. He's waiting for me every Friday, 9 a.m. And if I don't show up, I'll either get a call or I just get the invoice and I need to pay, right? So it's a great accountability, and actually also a moment where I can share what I did that week. And he's also growing his own business, so it's really a nice way to train and chat and progress in a way. But accountability matters, and you can do this in several ways. And shout out to Anna, hopefully she will apply this to her article. We discussed this too. If you say like, hey, next week I will publish this article on property records, you set yourself a public deadline. And even if just 5 people follow you or whatever, it's still a public deadline that's in your mind, right? And it keeps you kind of like accountable to really push this out. And the people around you influence your growth. So these are the people that I speak to a lot. Hid is here as well. Great guy, super inspiring, and that really helps me, right? Like, he shows his progress with his native Helm app. Shout out to Helm. And I'm inspired. I want to build more features for RocketSim too. And the sales guy, completely different area, but he still reaches milestones and he shares that with me, and I share my milestones, right? And that really helps you to keep that energy and keep going. And I don't feel jealousy, right? Like, I feel motivated. If my friends reach higher goals, I'm like, that's amazing. So that is possible, right? So that is something I can achieve too. So you should really gain energy from that. So next, productivity and focus. And I have a few work habits that I want to share you. But before I do, just a little disclaimer. Who's here with the boss? Okay, we're safe. Okay, well, it's nothing big, but what I hear in several podcasts from creators that went indie is that during their 9-to-5 job, they manage to squeeze in the task that they need to do and just focus really, really hard to make sure they finish that earlier. And by the end of the day, you might have 30 minutes that you can do something for yourself. And this in general, right? Like I mentioned before, having quick wins, knowing which tasks you can do that don't take much time is super helpful, because you can make the most out of the limited time that you have available. And I have countless examples of small little bugs that I fixed in RocketSim. And by the end of the week, I had a changelog super big, and I was like, whoa, this is actually quite a good release, right? And just by doing a little thing every day. Oh yeah, and there is also deep work. And with that, I mean, if you have some more time during the day, use that for the bigger tasks, right? Where you really need to focus and push through. Consistency. I mentioned it before. I launched my blog in 2015, and occasionally I published an article. Nothing really happened there. But as soon as I started writing an article every week, things really started to compound. And recently, Paul, I'm not sure if you know him, he has the CI blog. He did the same, and he proved again, like, consistency really pays off. And this example is about reading a book, right? Like, just read something every day, a little bit, and eventually you will finish that book. Perfectionism, you have limited time. So learn by shipping is super important. If you constantly think, this needs to be better, this needs to be perfect, it's pretty hard to really ship things. So sometimes you need to avoid perfectionism, push something out, and then optimize. And hopefully, Hidde, you still want to be friends, but I think sometimes you need to also skip making the design perfect. Unless you're really good at it, right? If it's just, like a matter of a few minutes. But If you don't know for sure that a feature will work out, you might better just ship it and learn from it. And maybe along the way, while it's being shipped, you can start optimizing the design. But you already gain learnings from what you shipped. This is another one, and this is also an example of what you can apply to your day-to-day job. If you leave something behind, so sometimes when I'm working, my son walks in, and the one thing that I promise myself is when my son walks in, I immediately stop and I chat with him. So what I quickly do is write something down so I know where I left off. And even if it's just keywords, it's already helping you to get back into the zone when it's time to get back. And the same applies to stop while it's still fun. If you go back to something where it was like a bug or a crash, something annoying, it's pretty hard to get yourself energized to get back into that project, right? But if it's something super exciting, you're like almost ready to publish, but you have only 5 minutes left or something, or maybe 10 minutes or 15, maybe stop at that point, because you know the next day you'll have 2 hours, and you want to have yourself excited to get back into the project with energy. Context-aware learning. I'm walking the dog 3 times a day. It's actually a great moment to chill out. And when I'm working on a certain feature, it could be a new Swift UI API, but it could also be, for example, paywall optimization, the Subclub podcast by Revenue Cat. Another shout out. I love it, and it really helps me when I'm thinking about optimizing the paywall offering that I have in my apps. So I open the podcast, I listen to it while I'm walking the dog, and that's kind of like an optimized way of making the most out of your time if you enjoy it. And you don't always have to do it, but sometimes it can really help you when you're in the context. And this is what I tell myself, right? If I'm a little bit better tomorrow, it's the same as the 1% example that I showed earlier. Eventually, I will be a much smarter version of myself. I at least achieve much more than I thought it would be possible. I'm not sure if it's true. My wife says that I'm always lucky. There's always a parking spot when I get somewhere. That's not truly related here, but say you get a job offer and they require you to have SwiftUI knowledge, but you've been lazy over the past few years. You didn't really do anything with it. You didn't listen to a podcast about SwiftUI. You didn't watch any WWDC videos. It's a lucky moment because you met somebody at a conference and they are looking exactly for somebody like you, but you have SwiftUI knowledge requirements, right? Moment lost. So in a way, investing in your knowledge is a great way to be ready for that moment when luck appears. And maybe after this talk you think like Antoine is just constantly thinking about work only, but it's not the case, right? You need to relax as well. And maybe I'm extreme, but I even plan the moments with my wife in the evenings, and it helps us both that we know, like, okay, we don't do anything else on those nights. That's really when we want to sit together. And the reality is we see each other much more than that, but it's at least keeping you accountable that you need to take time off and you need to chill out sometimes, right? So don't just always work. Yeah, and don't give up too quickly, right? Stay motivated. And if you're stuck, there's techniques, right? I'm not sure about you, but I often wake up the next day and I suddenly have the solution of a problem that I faced. And I even believe there's sleep learning. Like if you think about a problem before you go to bed, you kind of like process it during the night. That's the only explanation I have for it anyway. But yeah, I use a rubber duck. I use a rubber dog who's not here now. There you go. Maybe I should plug it in again. Worked the previous time. There we go. Oh, I see another screen flickering. Maybe it's connecting with another screen. I don't know. Either way, we're back. Think about a box, right? If you're stuck, invest in the logging that you have. And don't spend 2 hours fixing that problem. If you gain more information, it becomes much easier to solve it next time. So really optimize the time that you have. And the same with the feature, right? If you build it, you lack knowledge, invest in your knowledge, come back to the feature, and continue building it. Or maybe something like growth, right? Like we're developers, marketing is not always something we know, so invest in your knowledge and keep that loop going. I've had a few discussions yesterday, and one thing that comes up is that sometimes you work on a project that might not be truly your passion, right? And if you can pick what you work on, I would always say, like, do something you really love doing. Don't just build an AI tool because you see many people make a lot of money of it, right? Build something you love, because hard times will follow, and if you are passionate, it's much easier to push through. Automation, super important too. Automation costs time in the beginning, but eventually it will save you time. So if you indicate repetitive tasks and you can automate them, that's a great way to eventually have more time available to do other things. I do this too. If you follow my Swiftly weekly newsletter, you know that I have a weekly overview of proposals, Swift proposals that changed, and I'm not scanning those PRs manually and getting a sense of what happened. I have a tool that uses the JSON that is available, and I basically automatically scan those changes, and I press one button, and everything is set for the newsletter to go. So it's literally like 2 minutes compared to maybe 2 hours every week. So this really adds up, and it's not even super hard to build with something like SwiftUI. Diagnostics is another tool. This is what we built as we transferred when I was still working there. And this answers the common questions like, what OS are you using? Are you on the latest app version? It also has sessions on the bottom with logs, like the basic OS logs that you have in your app. And once again, countless examples of bugs that I could solve right away just by using this diagnostics report. And it saved me from replying. And 1 week later, I finally have all the context that I need. But I annoyed somebody that is actually trying to help me solve a bug for RocketSim. AI, obviously, yesterday's talk show was about Cursor AI. I don't go deep into this. I could do a talk alone on AI, but obviously embrace AI and see if you can add it to your workflow too. Development practices. Think about your development. What do you do every day and how can you speed it up? And this could be shortcuts for Git, but it could also be other stuff that just allows you to reuse code that you've written for another project already. And that's actually what I do. I have a stocks app as well, maybe not as known as RocketSim in this audience, but I do have a few packages that I can reuse for both those apps. And it allows you to maintain in a single place and benefit from the time that you spend on one project or another. So this is truly an investment for your future selves if you work on side projects. And for RocketSim too, I have several of the features in an isolated package. And the benefit there is that it feels like I start a new project, right? It's an isolated project. It even comes with its own UI layer. So it's really a way to focus, right? There's no spaghetti code. There's no distraction from other lines of code. And the iterations are much, much faster. So this is a great way to answer that need of, I want to build something new, while you actually apply it to your overall large project that you might have. I couldn't skip this in my talk, but I keep it short. I believe tests will save you time. And if at a minimum, test your core business logic, because you don't want to release something with bugs that might cost you revenue or anything like that, which is crucial when you want to go indie. So if you at least make sure before we release everything is running fine, then that's a great time saver eventually in the end. So especially when you're indie, eventually, you have unlimited time almost to work on everything. But for side projects, time is limited. So it's crucial that you pick the task that you want to build carefully. And I try to work in this way, where I really find the balance between what I like and what is requested by my users. And this is a project that I built together with Hida and Jordi, I think a year ago, something like that. And what it basically allows is users can vote on features that you have. And it's not as simple as just picking the one that is mostly upvoted, but you should use it as a guide, right? And in this case, for me, the other feature is more achievable because I already have a proof of concept for it. So this might also be a sneak peek into what is coming for RocketSim. And this is kind of like a graph, how you can pick your battles. The quick wins, I showed that earlier, if you have limited time. But if you have more time, it's still crucial to really pick the ones that, help you grow as much as possible. Your goal is to go indie eventually, so you need to have high impact with the high effort that you decide to apply. And this is an example of this year. And you can guess where, the peak started. That's where I released a feature that was most requested. It was the network monitoring, which kind of replaces several other apps, right? So once that was out, there was much more reason to upsell into a trial for the RocketSim users. So it proved to me like that roadmap that I showed earlier is really a guide that I should use in every decision that I make for future feature development. Marketing and audience growth. I'll be honest, this is not my expertise, but I still learned a lot. So if you repurpose your knowledge gains, that's already a great win. And I apply this obviously all the time. When I created the network traffic implementation, I blogged about it so I could kind of like surface it to my audience. I also posted on my Twitter. I already have the content. I just need to compile it, use the same video or same image, use it in a tweet, use it in a post on LinkedIn, and I kind of benefit from the same content that I have. And it all looks like each other, right? When users eventually come into the App Store, they recognize the same thing that you posted on the channels where you interact with your audience. And to me, that's developers. For you, it could be photographers on Instagram or anything like that. You want to make that a consistent route. And this is actually a very old image. Yesterday, Hidde was sitting next to me in the talk show in 4,000, so congrats to Helm. But it's a great milestone that he can share online. And I'm actually sharing this because they have a product Twitter account and also a personal Twitter account. So that's another win-win. You grow your own account as well as your product account. And something like a milestone is a great thing to use for that. And your audience looks for value. And I repurpose my content quite a bit. I even have automation set up for it. But only 2% of your followers will actually see your tweet, is what I once read in one of those articles. And if you think about that, it's much easier to think about repurposing evergreen content too. And same for your audience on Instagram, or repost those reels, or TikTok, or whatever platform you are on. See if you can create evergreen content. So I never say Xcode 16. I say this new feature in Xcode is great, right? Because Xcode 16 in 2 years feels really old. One thing I learned in Argentina last year was actually with speakers, and they were afraid to talk with me. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm always trying to be super approachable, so this is also a hint for afterwards. Go find me. I'm more than happy to talk with anyone. But I realized, and that's what they told me, like, your feed is so automated or so full of Swift content, you need to create a personality as well. And that's when I, embarrassed myself and made my mother-in-law more popular on Twitter, I think. And, well, Bernie's Mountain Dogs were great too. So yeah, think about, building an audience in the broader scheme of things, right? Really connect with your audience. Now, the next thing is more about building a connection in the way of creating email lists. It's often how things work in marketing. As soon as you have an email, you can use drip campaigns, and probably many of you find those annoying, but if you want to build a product, it's a way to surface your products. And you will lose a few customers, but you'll also gain a lot of growth. So yeah, I have a lot of funnels that all go into the same email list, and I optimize the drip campaign to, gain more growth. And marketing is like fishing. I'm building developer tools, so yes, you are my audience, but for your product, it might be that you need to be on Instagram or TikTok or all those other platforms. So really find where your audience is and use that in your advantage. And I wanted to share this visual too, because you can do a lot of marketing, but if your product isn't great, it's not worth paying a lot for paid acquisition. And funnels matter. This is Amplitude. That's what I use for RocketSim. And this is the onboarding funnel of RocketSim. And you can see that I replaced the onboarding where I first had a YouTube video, which quickly became outdated. And eventually I created an onboarding that's simpler, clickable, and you can navigate through it. And the results were pretty amazing, where 18% came through the 18% more came through the funnel. And that's not where the funnel starts. You might reach your audience via paid acquisition, they get into your app store, and then they can decide to install the app. And every single step is a place where they can drop off. So if you have a certain campaign for network traffic monitoring on Twitter, see if you can use those custom deep links that were announced this year at WWDC, and in combination with a custom product page where the network traffic is the first screen they see because that's recognizable. Much more likely that people will then also install the app because they know it's the right app. And then you can use the deep link into the onboarding, and you know they install the app from network traffic monitoring, and you can optimize your funnel towards that, like GoPro because you get network traffic monitoring instead of normally maybe GoPro because you do screen recording. Once again, it's those little improvements that really add up over time. But what if you don't have any users at all, right? You just get started. Well, build funnels, right? Go everywhere. I hope this is not that you don't like this. It was a mix. But yeah, the more funnels you have, every funnel adds up. And even if every funnel brings one user every day, well, you can count how many more users you will have every day. And if you're able to also compound those users, if every user brings in another user, that's when really growth will kick off. So yeah, multiple niche projects, that's another thing. And this is an example where I think things go wrong. If you have multiple apps but different audiences, it's normally fine, but with side projects, time is limited, right? So you need to think about win-wins. And in this case, you need to market on different places because you have different audiences. You need to maintain different audiences and so on. It's much better to optimize and bring those things together. If you can target the same audience, then everything what you will do compounds on all the other places, and you'll help each other grow. And that's the thing, right? My newsletter brings in new RocketSim users, but some people start in my RocketSim app, so I also have an email subscription form there, so people get into my newsletter from there. And my blog brings people to my newsletter, my blog brings people to RocketSim, and so on and so on. So there's much more benefit if you have the same audience for potential multiple products that you have. This is a case study from Jordi. Jordi does things quite differently than me, and it's still successful. And what he does, he creates a lot of free utilities, and you can pay whatever you want. But you need to buy it via Gumroad, which means you will give him your email address. And whenever he builds a new tool, he actually sends that to all those emails, and he gets a ton of installs right away. And it's not that he annoys them, because he delivers a new valuable tool. But the point being here that it shouldn't always be a paid tool, right? You can also build a small utility that's free. Maybe it can even be a part of an app that you already have. And that's something I'm thinking of for RocketSim. Maybe I can create a free utility that creates screenshots, and that brings in more users into the whole funnel that I have set up. So yeah, another example that works great. Building relationships is important too. And sorry, Adam, I put you here as well, but maybe you're thinking about doing a talk next year, right? If you chat with Adam today and you try to feel like what is he interested in for next year for the conference, that could maybe create that hidden opportunity of you getting an approval next year for your talk proposal. I'm just saying, like, don't just guess whether somebody will be useful, right? Anybody can bring value. And back in the days at WeTransfer, I did the same with, for example, junior engineers, right? You might think, like, well, they just get started, they don't know it. But in my experience, the opposite is often true, because they're fresh, they learn the latest APIs, they know a lot, right? So take everybody as serious as possible, and you never know what will be behind that. And it could be that you invest a lot, right? Those countless evenings that you bought beers for a certain friend and you never got something back, but 1 year later, maybe, it results in something, right? So it's not always about getting back your investment right away. Sometimes you need to give a bit more to eventually get back what you are looking for. Create win-win opportunities. I mentioned this quite a few times already. And this is the moment, Adam, you were super curious, but I'm launching a new podcast, and this is actually really the first time that I'm telling that in the public. And it's based on the guest lectures that I already had in the course, and I'm also sitting down with Clemens and Ryan. Ryan is from Blackbox, a pretty known app, often featured in the keynotes. I'm going to sit down with those indies for myself, That's a win-win because I learn a lot from them. I also build up a connection with them, but also, you know, I give them a stage to show what they do as an indie developer, what do they build. And it's actually not a win because I also help you, right? Like, my story is mine, it worked for me, but maybe the story of Jordi works much better for you with his 2-2-2 methodology. And that's my goal, right? Like, I want to inspire as much as possible and help you succeed in your indie journey. So go check it out, if you will. It should be on all platforms. I tried searching on YouTube yesterday. It's a bit challenging, so make sure to use Going Indie with Antoine van der Lee. I guess I'm just getting started. But yeah, growth will follow eventually, as we learned. And yeah, your reach compounds, right, with the relationships. And in this case, for my podcast, I hope that the guests will retweet the podcast, you know, and they might have a different audience, so the podcast will eventually grow and grow and grow. And yeah, that helps me grow my reach as well. Financial strategies. I mean, your goal is to go indie, right? Maybe your goal is to just make your side projects successful and stay at your job. But yeah, still, you want to grow, right? So it's important to start measuring early on. Integrate a tool like RevenueGet or any other tool that you might want to use, and get familiar with these kind of metrics. And this is the RocketStream paywall. I did a ton. I love optimizing, even if it's like 1% win that I can take. I'll apply it. And this is not the perfect paywall, right? This works for me. Maybe it's not even the best version that I can get, but it shows you all the little things that I improved over time. And define your offering. I decided to go for a subscription, and I know many of you are annoyed by it, but it is a way to build a recurring income. And fun fact, the very first version of RocketSim was so simple, but it had a lifetime of €9 or something. And the yearly now is about €30, right? So the thing is, that version was not the version that I was planning for. I knew that, you know, RocketSim would grow and become much, much, much bigger. And to me, you know, I truly believe if I had lifetime forever, I wouldn't be able to go indie now, because now I have a recurring income that I can really build up forward on. So that's my opinion. Let's say that. But yeah, you shouldn't just increase your pricing, right? Make sure that value is in balance. So this can actually be a recurring thing where you justify the price increase based on the new features that you add. Could also be inflation or another reason that you have, but yeah, don't annoy your users with a sudden price increase that is not justifiable. And this is a great one. If you're still working at your main job, you're not dependent on the income of your side projects yet. And that means you can earn money, and I would suggest you have a separate bank account and put money there so you can really not do anything with it. And use it, you know, use it for paid acquisition and see if you can get another user, which hopefully pays again, which means you have more money. So you can do another paid acquisition. You can see the flywheel effect. And by the time you want to go indie, hopefully you have so much growth that you can lower the investments that you do and use a bit more of the money that you earn. And you can do the same here, paying for a tool. I find it still hard. I still have the mindset like, you know, I need to have the biggest margin possible. But tools can increase your growth so much that it pays back for the money that you spent on a tool. And it can also mean that you save time, right? Or visibility that you gain. And there are different achievements that you can get with the investments that you do. But the key here is you have your main job income. You're not dependent on your side project's income, hopefully. Great way to grow. And what I did in January 2023, I decided to work 1 day a week on my side projects. The potential that I saw was just too big to ignore. And once I started doing that, you can see what the revenue does. And the key is, I had every Friday for deep work. I had like 6-7 hours where I can really focus on the major features that weren't really possible to achieve in a short amount of time when it was still a side project. And this is where I gained so much more growth that I also realized, like, oh, whoa, okay, if this is the effect of 1 day a week, what will be the effect of 5 days a week? And eventually I reached the milestone that I could go indie. You do want to reduce risks. Sherlocking is still a thing. If Apple suddenly decides to, you know, build an amazing simulator tool, I hope they do. I try to inspire them. I lose a lot of revenue, right? So that's also why I focus on other things, like my blog, like courses, to not bet on one horse. Now, this is actually a fun story. I was chatting with Bas and Hidde this morning, and I was telling Hidde, you should watch the Sustaining Your Indie Career module of my course. And he was like, what are you talking about? You're just 6 months indie. You can't even say that you sustained your own indie career. So that's a little, be aware. But still, I think I know a few things that I learned. At least some things will change when you go indie. I figured, it would be super easy to take my time off. But the opposite was true. You really need to plan your day to make sure you're able to achieve what you think you wanted to achieve. And if that's done, then that's done for the day, because there's endless work you can do. Today's passion might not be tomorrow's. Everybody wanted to become an astronaut, and we're all developers now. It's fine, things might change, and you can always go back. Sean Allen, famous indie developer over the past years, decided to go back to a full-time job because, time changed and he just wanted to go back to a job. And that's fine, right? Nothing is set in stone. But don't forget why you went indie. Those are just core values for me, at least, that I wanted to do this. And I'm still super happy with the decision that I made. Key takeaways: you'll be wearing a lot of hats. Use your main job as well to learn from the marketing people, experts that are in your team maybe. Go sit down with them or ask the ASO expert, like, how do you actually do ASO for our app? It's such a great opportunity to learn from the smart people in your company. Now you're still in that company and working there. It will be tough. It's step by step, but I'm sure you will eventually make it. And like I said, I want you to succeed. Most of the slides here are from my course, but it's just, I had many more slides in my early version of this talk. There's so much more to learn. So yeah, if you're really thinking about going in, go check this out. And I want to end up with, think about your true potential. I think you can reach much more than you think. You just have to do it with the right habits, consistency, and pushing through. So thanks a lot.